Yo, what's going on today, guys? It's your boy Zazo, and I'm back again for another video. So today we're going to be going into the 5 things that make learning code easy. So a little bit about myself is I spent around 8 to 9 years coding. That's when I started coding, and I've held various software engineering jobs, data engineer, a test software quality assurance engineer, so things like that. So we're gonna be going into these 5 things. Let's get into it. So the first thing is with coding, it's a very unique skill, and it's a skill that's actually very similar to something like basketball or a sport. What do I mean by this? I mean that you can read and watch basketball or any type of sport all day long, but until you get out on the field or get out on the court and actually do it, you're not going to get any better. Coding is no different. Coding is a very unique skill that is, quite frankly, hard to learn. You need to first learn by doing. So I would suggest avoiding the pitfall of just sitting there and reading all these software engineering books and all these different programming languages books and not following along and not actually getting in your editor and coding. That's the first mistake. Another thing is that it's very hard to code in general. So what kind of gets you through that hard step is finding something that you actually want to build and want to learn about. Then reverse engineer your tech stack based on what you want to learn. So for example, you want to build a website. There's plenty of ways you can go with it. You can just go the original route, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and create a static website to start if you're new. Or you can start getting more advanced using frameworks like React. If you are into Python, you could do stuff like Django and frameworks like that. But the key thing is to find out what interests you, what project you want to build, and then get your tech stack from there, and then go and do that. So the second thing is learn to actually program. And you might be like, what does that even mean? So what I mean by this is learn to program, do not learn how to memorize syntax. So when I was starting, I would always just try to, memorize. I started with Java. That's the language I initially started with. I would try to essentially take mental screenshots of, oh, this is how I declare a variable. Okay, int, blah, 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 static void, this. That's not the way to go, because every programming language kind of hits on majority of the same concepts. So if you learn the concept, you can easily switch from language to language. The syntax is just written a little bit differently. So I would suggest learning how to actually program and solve problems with code, any coding language. Obviously that's going to be based on what you want to do and what you want to build, but make sure you're learning the concepts overall and things like object-oriented programming, functions, loops, conditionals, learning how they actually work in the program rather than just, okay, for a for loop, I have to do this, remember the parentheses. That's not going to help you out. Learn how the concept works. From there, you can apply it in any language. And like I already said, just do not focus on memorizing. You do not need to memorize syntax. Does it help to know that a semicolon goes here or a dot goes here? Yes, but that's not the most important part. That is, most of the time, all these editors will tell you when something's wrong. So don't even try to memorize. Just learn the concepts of programming and you'll be fine. Number 3, you want to create a roadmap. I kind of hit on this in number 1. So you essentially want to figure out what you want to do as a software engineer, data engineer, machine learning engineer, whatever you want to do. Find out what you want to do, what you actually like to do, or what's interesting to you. Reverse engineer what programming language or languages you will need to learn from there. Number 4 is understanding over syntax. So nowadays with AI and all this machine learning algorithms that will help you and generate code for you, This is helpful to speed up developers that already kind of know what they're doing instead of writing the manual tasks, but they know the underlying concepts already. Where you can get into trouble is if you're new and you're doing that and copy and pasting code and not knowing how it works. When you run into a bug, you're going to have to go through hell and high water just to figure it out. So make sure that you're understanding what you're copy and pasting. Also understand if there are bugs, you're understanding why that's happening. Copy and pasting code is, like I said, it's very efficient for more seasoned engineers, but for new engineers, it's actually could be detrimental because ChatGPT and all these other LLMs, they can give you stuff that may work, but in the grand scheme of your whole project, it might actually break something, and then you're doing more harm than good. So you might want to pump your brakes on the ChatGPT. What I do recommend is using it to your advantage of, if you can't figure something out, hey, let me generate the code and make ChatGPT explain to you how it works. That's all I'm saying. So it's a useful tool. Make sure that you're using it right. And another thing is that you're gonna need to read documentation, especially for all these different frameworks that are out there nowadays. You need to read documentation, understand how these functions work, how these different things are derived in order to basically take advantage of them and use them in your program. Make sure that you need to read documentation. Read documentation. I hate reading documentation, but it saves a lot of time and it's so much easier that way. Number 5 is probably the most important out of all of these. Get used to failing and don't be afraid to fail. When you are learning, go in there and try to do what you're going to do without any help and go in there and fail and struggle, because to be honest, that's where the most learning comes from. There's so many times where I struggled for like a whole week on one little feature, and guess what? I learned so much, and guarantee that's not one that I'm going to slip up on again. Now, will it not happen again? No, I'm sure it will happen again, but I'll be able to figure it out really quick and be able to get a solution to it. So that I'm not really worried about. But if you can't get used to failing and making mistakes, especially in the professional workplace, you're not going to join as an entry-level engineer and just code up a whole bunch of things and be like, yeah, passing it for review. It gets reviewed and it just gets passed off and approved. That's not going to happen how you think it will. Most of the time, first of all, you're going to have trouble even getting something to code review without getting some help, which is fine. Just make sure that whenever somebody's helping you, you're internalizing that information and you are actually using it to go further and learning and learning and learning and learning. And then boom, you'll be more seasoned than you know, and you'll be able to develop the next entry level engineers that are coming up after you. All right, so this is the end of the video. If you like the video, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment down below on what you want to see more of. All right, love, peace, and chicken grease. I'm out.